On today's early edition at 6, with instability becoming more and more of a concern in the north, the South Korean government takes action to ensure it's ready in the case of the unexpected. A special team dedicated to monitoring and responding to North Korea's potential provocations is set up. And thousands of unionized railway workers continue their strike against what they claim is a first step toward privatizing the Korea Railway Corporation, while authorities continue to put pressure on striking employees to get them back to work. The Supreme Court ruled that regular bonuses should be calculated as part of standard wages. It's a ruling that's drawn a clear line between management and laborers. We take an in-depth look into the issue. These stories and more coming up, so stay tuned.
It is 9 a.m. in London, 5 p.m. in Manila, and 6 on a Friday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. The latest on South Korea's preparations against possible North Korean provocations. That's our starting point for today.
Right, to better prepare for any possible scenario on the Korean peninsula in the wake of Chang Song-taek's execution in North Korea, South Korea has decided to set up a standing committee and a secretariat of the National Security Council to make NSC security meetings a regular thing. Chief Presidential Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Security, Ju Choi-gi, made the announcement at an emergency briefing just a few hours ago, saying the NSC Standing Committee will be headed by National Security Chief Kim Jang-soo and will be in charge of reviewing the government's foreign affairs and security-related policies once a week and devising measures to counter any pending concerns. Now, NSC meetings will also be convened anytime the president thinks it's necessary. The Secretariat, meanwhile, will be systematically supporting preparations and management of NSC or working-level committee meetings. And that is in response to the harsh rhetoric from Pyongyang flowing south once again on this Friday. Now, this time threatening to launch an attack on Seoul without notice. The strong comments come 3 days after South Korean conservatives staged a large anti-North Korea protest in the nation's capital, marking the second anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Arirang News Defense Ministry correspondent Han Da-eun has this report.
A fresh warning out of North Korea is turning up the heat on inter-Korean relations. Seoul's defense ministry has confirmed that Pyongyang sent a threat to South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade on Thursday through a joint military hotline at the West Sea. The message sent from the North's National Defense Commission says, quote, "If South Korea continues provocative acts against the state's highest dignity, it will retaliate ruthlessly without a warning." The highest dignity refers to the state's leader, Kim Jong-un. South Korean conservative groups staged large street rallies in downtown Seoul on Tuesday, protesting North Korea's authoritarian rule and human rights abuses. The protests were held to mark the second anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. In response to the threat, the South Korean government sent a warning back across the border, saying it would respond strongly to any provocation. Seoul's defense ministry had already strengthened its combat readiness earlier this month following the execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle, Chang Song-taek. North Korea also lashed out against South Korean President Park Geun-hye on Friday through its state-run media. Taking note of the one-year anniversary of President Park's Election Day victory, a Korean Central News Agency article titled "Sweet Promises, Bitter Reality" strongly denounced President Park for not keeping her campaign pledges and said she would be, quote-unquote, strictly judged by history. The piece went on to call President Park an illegal president who's suppressing anyone who asks for democracy and justice. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
The U.S. government has expressed serious concerns that the recent execution of the North Korean leader's uncle could be a prelude to some kind of provocation. Our Park Ji-won has more.
General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the U.S. military's Joint Chiefs of Staff, says a North Korean provocation could be in the works following the recent execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Jang Song-taek.
These kind of internal actions by dictators are often a precursor to provocation to distract attention from what they're doing inside of that country. So yeah, if you're asking me, am I concerned? Absolutely.
Speaking at the same Pentagon press conference Thursday, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said North Korea's sudden removal of the once powerful Jang increases concerns about the North and deepens the suspicions of the regime's motives.
That nation is as closed as any nation in the world. There is no transparency. There is no interconnect to the outside world.
The execution of Jang is seen by experts as the biggest upheaval in North Korea since the regime conducted its third nuclear test in February. With Jang out of the picture, suspicions are rising about the path the North will take in the coming weeks and months. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Year in and year out, the United Nations passes a resolution condemning the human rights abuses in North Korea and calling for change. With the recent execution of the second most powerful men in the North fresh in their minds, the UN General Assembly passed another one this week. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The United Nations does not approve of the death penalty under any circumstances and is urging North Korea to release the tens of thousands of people who are being held as political prisoners. In a resolution adopted by consensus Wednesday, the UN General Assembly criticized the North Korean regime for its human rights abuses. It said Pyongyang is violating the civil, political, economic, and social rights of its people. This latest resolution follows the execution of Jang Song-taek earlier this month.
The United Nations has taken a very clear position that under any circumstances, United Nations is opposed to the imposition of a death penalty. This is a very fundamental human rights issues.
A North Korean delegate responded to the resolution by calling it a, quote, fabrication concocted by hostile forces. The resolution on human rights abuses is a regular occurrence each year and is designed to put more pressure on the North Korean regime. But it also holds no legal consequences. UN Secretary General Pan Ki-moon also warned that parties surrounding the Korean peninsula must be vigilant and tread carefully so as not to do anything impulsive. The General Assembly also adopted resolutions on Syria and Iran, expressing serious concerns about the human rights violations in those countries. But it welcomed recent pledges made by new Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to improve in some areas of human rights. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is encouraging business leaders to set up an independent consumer financial protection bureau. Well, during a luncheon with the country's leading financial executives and experts on this Friday, the president called on the nation's financial sector to become more trustworthy, creative, and global. President Park said protecting consumers' rights is the first step towards restoring their faith in business, with a series of corruption scandals having emerged in the sector this year. The Korean leader also said the financial sector should ease most of their regulations except for those on consumer protection and financial soundness, and provide financial support for new ideas and technologies so that those ideas can be developed for business. Meanwhile, the National Assembly Special Committee on Political Reform began discussions on this Friday on how to retool the local election system. The 18-member committee, headed by a ruling party lawmaker, on this day determined the makeup of two subcommittees to discuss improving school superintendent elections and whether to scrap a system under which the political parties field candidates for elections in the basic units of local government. Now, provincial cities and counties and districts in metropolitan cities. The rival parties pledged to reform the local election system in the run-up to last year's presidential election to reduce the number of money for nomination scandals involving lawmakers. The Political Reform Committee will hold public hearings on the issue starting next week, and it plans to wrap up all the necessary legislative work by the end of January 2014. Now moving on, no major hiccups have been detected in the Korean economy following the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to scale back its bond buying program. And for details, we turn to our economics correspondent Hwang Ji-hye.
There were fears of major capital outflows in Korea due to the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to start tapering its bond buying stimulus program. However, local stocks ended higher on Friday, with the benchmark Kospi rising 0.39% to close at 1,983.3. Analysts say the Fed's announcement helped reduce prolonged market uncertainties. They add the tapering indicates that the U.S. economy is on the track to recovery, something that will prompt investors to make riskier moves. Foreigners also extended their buying in Korea, scooping up a net 33.8 billion won, or roughly $32 million US dollars. The governor of the Bank of Korea has also downplayed the effect of the Fed's tapering on the domestic market. Kim Jung-soo said in a meeting with the heads of local banks on Friday that local financial markets are doing well, weathering the impact of the Fed's stimulus tapering. He cited net buying on Korea's stock and bond markets after the Fed's announcement on Thursday. The local currency, meanwhile, fell against the greenback and closed at 1,061.2 won. Dealers mainly attributed the fall of the local currency to the rising value of the dollar. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
통상임금에 포함될 수 없습니다. 통상임금에서 제외하기 위함이 아닙니다.
정기 상임금과 같이 기타 다른 요건이 갖춰지기만 하면 얼마든지 통상임금에 해당될 수 있는 것입니다.
Now, companies in Korea face a jump in wage bills after the Supreme Court ruled that regular bonuses should be calculated as part of a standard or base wages, though the increase in labor costs will not be as high as had been feared.
The ruling came in a case filed by automotive parts maker KB Autotech, but will affect about 60 similar lawsuits aimed at forcing companies to make up for wage shortfalls as far back as 3 years.
Now, the ruling has definitely stirred up controversy with a stark divide in opinion between the management and laborers. Well, for more in-depth analysis of the issue and a look into the ramifications, we're joined live in the studio by Dr. Song Se-ryun, professor at Kyunghee University Law School.
Dr. Song, it's great to have you back. It's been a while.
Good to be back here.
All right, Professor Song, so one of the most contentious sticking points in the debate has been whether to include bonuses in standard or ordinary wages. Now, could you walk us through how the problem came about by starting with an explanation of how Korea's wage scheme differs from that of other countries?
Yeah, as you pointed out, the Korean wage scheme is a little bit complex. I mean, in other countries, you would see the base pay and you would see a bonus, which is usually performance-based. But in Korea, you have a base pay and you have bonuses that may or may not be related to your performance. And you have other items like welfare-related items, and sometimes you get bonuses or some additional pays for rice cakes for the holidays. And that complexity comes from a simple fact that Korea uses this scheme where you use an ordinary wage to peg it to other pays, like the weekend pay, overtime, and even the maternity leave. So for the management, they have an incentive to get the quantity or the amount of the ordinary wages down so that other wages based on that would be minimized. Of course, labor would not like that idea.
Okay, that's the present situation, a turning point, not a very welcome one to many people. What kinds of economic and social ramification do we expect from this ruling?
I think if you look at it in a positive sense, that convoluted system of having a complex wage structure is not sustainable. So this ruling is not really surprising because they're just reiterating what the concept of bonus is all about. If you're getting a regular pay on your work, regardless of your performance, it should be part of the ordinary wage. It has been the ruling all along. It's just that there has been different interpretations in the government agencies, and the business customs have created a slightly distorted system. So in a positive sense, that is a good thing to fix that once and for all. But of course, because the Korean economy and the wage system has built around the tacit understanding that is a little bit different from what the Supreme Court said, if the massive lawsuit that is being filed is allowed, there will be a confusion in a legal sense in a courtroom, and also management is looking at a massive bill that goes as far as 3 years.
But in the long run, just by looking at the wage scheme of this country, I suppose this puts on par with the scheme of other countries, and it would make it easier or more simplified for multinational companies to come and, I suppose, operate here in Korea.
Right. The accountant, for instance, will have an easier time with the simpler system. But one thing to point out is that the convoluted system was necessary if the business argument is put forth, because the Korean labor system is unnecessarily rigid. It's hard to lay off people. It's hard to have a flexibility on your business depending on how the economy and the business is going. So that's why they would rather have fewer people and put them on an overtime pay rather than hiring more people. So that is a larger kind of issue that needs to be addressed in not in the courtroom, but probably in a political arena.
Right, but this ruling, Wednesday's ruling, is also raising concerns that this might drive the businesses to perhaps opt for increase in overseas production, so leaving home base and making production overseas, and or slash the number of new hires. What's your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not a concern. The move to overseas outsourcing, that has been going on for decades. And also the ruling, a significant part of this ruling is that the court, in their Solomonian kind of wisdom, they all but blocked the retroactive lawsuit going back to 3 years. So that's something that was a compromise even from a court's point of view. So in that sense, probably it's not really too much of a concern. For example, if you look at the bill that the businesses come out with, $38 billion of costs. But then about 24 billion of them was about having a preparation for the lawsuit. If they lose for 3 years all back pay, if they have to pay out all of those at once, there will be $24 billion. So you're slashing the big chunk of that out of their fear and the concern. So I think that it would not be as dramatic as some people would say. I think it will be okay.
Okay, so basically there was no point in delaying the inevitable, and it's a change that's not necessarily for the worse. But there are concerns, there are skeptics that feel that the new wage scheme might discourage foreign investment into Korea. What's your take on that?
I think there has always been that concern. And two things that came out is that it is again highlighted that the Korean wage system and the labor system are rigid. And the other thing was because the businesses are following government agencies' directives for so long, this Supreme Court ruling is somewhat of a surprise. Although I said it is consistently said the same thing, but from a business point of view, they're hearing from two government branches different messages. And probably the foreign business will say that, well, is it really settled? Well, is it really a consistent policies regarding the business that the Korean government is implementing? So there has been that concern, and in this ruling did not dissipate that.
Now, of course, despite the fact that the Supreme Court's ruling seems to be meeting midway between the management and the laborers, the nation's business sector will definitely be faced with higher labor costs. That's for sure, one thing. And there are experts who say that SMEs, small and mid-sized enterprises, will be hit harder than larger firms. So does the government need to do something in order to ease the burden on them?
I think so. The ordinary wage controversy has been pitted against the big business and the big laborers. And what has been missing is the discussion about what's the impact on the small to mid-sized businesses. I think that government has a role, especially Yeouido, the National Assembly, who should come out and look at this system. And based on what the Supreme Court said, I think they should incorporate that ruling and come up with a clearer guideline as to how to organize the wage system, and also what kind of benefits that small to mid-sized business firm should have, having the simpler system.
Well, Dr. Song Se-ryun, professor at Kyung University Law School, thank you for shining light on all the nook and cranny of this issue. We look forward to having you back here sometime soon.
Thank you. I would like that.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life.
HeadClass to visit expert.
Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2 points.
Scores of people are injured, some very seriously, after the ceiling of a packed Apollo Theatre in London collapsed during a performance. Our Connie Kim has the details.
Police say at least 88 people have been injured, 7 seriously, after part of a ceiling in London's Apollo Theatre collapsed during a performance on Thursday evening local time. Many of the wounded were transported in a double-decker bus to a nearby hospital for treatment. Authorities say that while several people were very badly hurt, no one suffered life-threatening injuries. Police say the collapse occurred at around 8:15 p.m. local time, when over 700 people were watching a performance of the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. Coming a week before Christmas, the Apollo Theatre, like many others in London, was packed to the brim with theatergoers. Witnesses say they heard a strange crackling noise before the collapse, but thought it was part of the show.
We just thought it was sound effects of the theatre, and then of the and then we just looked up and the whole ceiling, it was like slow motion, it just kind of came down.
Shaftesbury Avenue, where the Apollo is located, remains cordoned off by the authorities. About an hour before the ceiling collapse, London was hit by a heavy thunderstorm, but the exact cause of the collapse in the 112-year-old theater is, as yet, unknown. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
4 people were killed and another 4 injured when gunmen opened fire at an international airport in the Philippines on Friday. The mayor of a southern Philippine town and his wife are among the dead. Authorities say the suspects were wearing police uniforms at the time of the attack, and they fled on motorcycles. No arrests have been made, and an investigation is underway.
Well, Christmas and New Year's are just around the corner, which usually means there's no shortage of concerts for classical music fans here in Seoul. And according to our Kim Ji-yeon, this year is no different. And the place to be is the Seoul Arts Center.
Korea's all-time favorite New Age pianist Kuramoto Yuki and violinist Richard Yongjae O'Neill will be celebrating Christmas in Seoul together with a concert performance. They'll be playing some of Yuki's most popular pieces, such as Lake Louise and the famous Valtoy Full, the Skater's Waltz Opus 183.
the Christmas gift this year to me will be that he's arranged some new works for piano and viola. So that's a wonderful, I can't think of a nicer gift for me as a musician to get some sort of new, beautiful repertoire by such a master.
The Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, which holds one of the most popular end-of-the-year concerts in Korea, and conductor Chung Myung-hoon will feature Beethoven's Last Symphony No. 9 Choral and other musical pieces in collaboration with soprano Kathleen Kim and tenor Alfred Kim, both from the New York-based Metropolitan Opera. Other world-renowned music stars such as soprano Im Sun-hye and violinist Clara Jumi-kang will perform at the Gangnam Symphony Orchestra New Year's concert at the Seoul Arts Center on January 17th. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Time now to get a check on the weather conditions. For that, we go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, I understand the fine dust is once again affecting all of us here in Seoul, and I can feel it.
That's right, Kanya. A preliminary fine dust watch was issued at 8 this morning, and we're getting about 2 to 3 times the normal amount, so children and the elderly should take caution.
And us included, of course. And how about the temperatures? Are we expecting a warm-up anytime soon?
Well, Daniel, it looks like we're going to get back to our seasonal average temperatures starting Sunday afternoon. However, as of now, Gyeonggi-do province is under a cold wave watch, not to mention that the East Coast and West Coast regions will get another 1 to 3 centimeters of snow starting later tonight through tomorrow afternoon. Other than that, temperatures will rise in the morning, but taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -7 degrees with a high of 3. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju peak at 6 and 5 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, snow showers are forecast overnight in Jeju with a daytime high of 7 degrees. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Kumgang top out at 4 and -3 degrees respectively. Well, hope you have a wonderful Friday night, and back to you guys.
Well, that's all from us for this hour. And when you go out shopping for Christmas, don't shop too hard. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Moon Gan-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Hope your Christmas weekend is filled with wonders, and we'll see you right back here same time Monday evening. Good night.